Is the most dangerous man the one who shouts or the one who never tells you what he's feeling?
They are okay to cry in front of a woman, but they are not okay to cry in front of a man. If a man needs to be held, who will the man go to? क्योंकि सिखाया ही गया सोसाइटी के अंदर कि लड़के अगर इमोशनल कुछ बात बोले तो वो सीरियसली वो मतलब उनको बोलो भाई इमोशनल की जरूरत नहीं, तुम्हें अपनी फोकस करो पढ़ाई पे, लड़की है क्या या फिर अपनी पढ़ाई पे फोकस करो, तुम्हारी वैल्यू क्या है.
Today we have a guest who is poking at that silence. My name is Dr. Taneja, you know me better as Dr. Cuterus, and this is She Comes First.
All times a boy is just thinking of return on investment. Your value is dependent on your success. So when you're failing, you're not being man enough because they want you to focus on return on investment. Every boy in our country is a number. Young boys in our country are starved of touch. They are starved of touch. They don't have anybody who can hold them, can make them feel like they matter, their being on this planet matters.
But no, I mean, I feel like because you've done this work so much, मतलब you would have spoken to so many people जो आके बताते हैं कि what it's like to be a man and what does a man look like, especially आजकल के social media context में जब हमें trends, masculinity एक trend बना हुआ है. How do you define what does a safe man look like? What is a safe man to you?
A safe, I mean, it's a great question. I think काफी deep शुरू कर दिया already. I think a safe man is someone who you can really be yourself with, right? Someone you don't have to put a performance in front of. जिसके सामने आपको ये डर नहीं है कि मैं जज होऊंगा या होंगी. And of course, if you're a woman, a safe man is someone you can truly feel safe in your body, in your skin. But I really feel like I think the word comfort is really important to safety. Can you actually sit with someone and just not have to worry about who you are, what you have to be? Because अब सभी परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं. हमने इंटरनेट की बात की, आजकल सभी परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं, राइट? मैं तो इतने यंग लोगों से मिलता हूँ, मैं तो उनसे बात करता हूँ एंड समटाइम्स आई गेट शॉक्ड दैट they don't themselves know, like they always talk about the performance online, the performativeness online. Unfortunately, when I ask them who is the real you, they can't even say, because what is the real us right anymore? Given everything that is online, that is constantly telling you have to be like this, you don't have to be like this, this is a good way, this is a bad way, and then and the thing about the internet is that everything that somebody tells you, someone will tell you the exact opposite and it will sound exactly true. So if one person is sitting and telling you ये है masculinity, the other person is going to tell you the exact opposite and sound just as confident. So then how do you choose? And the answer always is about who are you from, what part of you makes you feel most comfortable being. And if you are allowed to be that in a society, and of course if that's not a part that is harmful to society, if you're actually allowed to be that, for a lot of men some of that really comes down to actually being accepting of parts of themselves that are not necessarily outwardly masculine, right? Parts of themselves where they don't have to constantly be aggressive, be loud, be overly confident, perform, always be successful, always be macho, You can really be yours. Like I always find it so interesting. There's one thing I'll say at the end, you've recently moved to Delhi, right? And मैं दिल्ली में बहुत सारे लोगों से मैंने बात की, मैं पूरे कंट्री में बहुत सारे आदमियों से बात की है, स्पेशली यंग मैन के साथ. एंड वन ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट आई kept hearing from Delhi boys, which is different from the boys in different parts of India, which is that कि यार हमारे अंदर masculinity वाली इशू नहीं है, हम तो बहुत प्यार करते हैं एक दूसरे के साथ. दिल्ली वाले में तो लड़के ना एक दूसरे जान दे देंगे, एक दूसरे की जान दे देंगे, दूसरे की जान दे देंगे. मैं तुमसे एक क्वेश्चन पूछता हूँ फिर उनसे कि तुम एक दूसरे के लिए जान देने को तैयार हो, बट क्या तुम एक दूसरे के सामने रो सकते हो? You can go to war for each other, but can you cry in front of each other? And that is not something that a lot of men are comfortable doing till date. They are okay to cry in front of a woman, but they are not okay to cry in front of a man.
Wow.
But think about it, right? If a man needs to be held, who will the man go to? If I am going through something and I want just someone to hold me, which is a very natural feeling, right? I just need to feel held today. I will look for a woman in my life because I feel safe with her. And even if with the man that I feel safest with, I will not go and say, यार मुझे hold करेगा, because that is seen as, you know, अरे मेरी masculinity कम हो जाएगी अगर मैं ऐसा कुछ बोल दिया किसी के सामने.
फिर homophobia भी तो है.
वो सब है, वो all of that. So you know, again I feel like if you can feel comfortable enough with someone where you can genuinely ask them to hold you without feeling afraid or without feeling judged, that should be the safest person out there.
So you mentioned that you have gone to so many places, you've spoken to so many men, and you have gone into rooms where definitely these conversations would have been difficult. सब आदमी नहीं होते हैं receptive, and I think यही एक that's what I really enjoy about speaking with you every time, that लड़कियां तो बहुत बात करती हैं about you know like emotions and you know प्यार मोहब्बत and vulnerability. I think लड़के कम करते हैं, and hopefully that's changing with content like yours and the conversations you're bringing on the table. But what is when you have these conversations, what is the shift that happens? क्या बदल जाता है जिसकी वजह से लोग safe feel करना शुरू कर देते हैं? And on a larger scale, what does that tell us? Like, what are men starved of?
Yeah, no, great question again. Okay, let me put it this way. Now I've gone to all of these colleges. There are things that I observe about gender, and of course let me say first and foremost कि जो third gender होते हैं या फिर other genders होते हैं, they're not very comfortable coming forward in a lot of these campuses, especially in open spaces. So I can't really talk about a pattern there, but I can talk about the pattern between men and women. With women, when you give them a safe space, they first and foremost, the first thing they talk about is safety. The first thing they talk about is harassment. The first thing they talk about is like how the entire world puts them in this bracket where they are seen only as women. Like their entire worth or value in life is being a woman and a body at that, because they're constantly objectified, they're constantly seen as like an object of desire by
that needs to be protected.
Or that needs to be protected, or that needs to be kept safe, or that needs to, you know, be dominated, or that needs to be harassed, or whatever it is, right? It's always comes down to like they're not seen as human beings, they're seen as women, and that is just it's a sad thing to say, right? But at the same time, what I also see is that every time a woman has come and spoken about this, they would immediately talk about how they have all these incredible women friends in their life that make them feel safe. How they are these incredible women in that classroom, in their hostels, in their lives, in their homes, who are there for them, who don't make them feel, alone. On the other hand, when you talk to guys and you give them a safe space, first of all, it's very hard for guys to really know what to do in a safe space, because they've never, but it's true, right? Like they've never been given one. So the first thing you say, even if you go and say this is a mental health conversation, we are trying to do a safe space. Of course, when I try to have these conversations, first I open up. So I'm always vulnerable about my own life, which kind of gives an impetus to people saying that if this is an older person coming and saying, I have gone through this, I just want to hear you out. If you feel comfortable enough, this is a safe space, please express yourself. We also have psychologists who go with us, so we do a lot of keep a lot of checks and balances in place. But still, the first thing that boys are likely to talk about is love. It's love and breakup, because that's the only thing as an emotion that is acceptable to boys to talk about. अब सोचो कभी भी कि आप अगर हार्टब्रेक की बात करें कोई आपको जज नहीं करेगा, क्योंकि सारे लड़के बात करते हैं उसके बारे. बट इफ यू टॉक अबाउट I failed in my exam and I tried to do something to myself, that is not something you can say out, because the moment you say that, everyone's going to be like, what is wrong with this guy? तुम कैसी बातें कर रहा है भाई? You don't know what to say, you just don't know what, it's blank. So, and that has happened. So, so the things that we have seen is either they talk about something completely like, अच्छा लड़के प्यार हो गया, छोड़ गई, ये हो गया, and then make a joke out of it. Because again, any emotional conversation always ends up in laughter, always ends up in mockery, always ends up with whether you make a joke on yourself or somebody else makes. When you go beyond that and you really just try to kind of be like, let's get a little real and see what happens, the number one thing they talk about is loneliness. It's the number one thing that most boys, the moment they feel like I will not be judged in this space, they will say कि क्या बात करूँ, कोई सुनने वाला तो है नहीं. What can I say when I know that I will feel judged, when I know somebody's going to make fun of me, I know that they just don't feel safe. And there is a reasoning for it, right? I mean, there's so many different, okay, let me put it this way. So one of the things that I observed when I went across the country was a lot of boys after my sessions, and this started happening as a pattern, and I was very confused. I was like, ये क्या चल रहा है? Where boys would come after the conversation and say, sir, can I have a hug or can I give you a hug? And I'm like, so very sweet. You know, the first time it happened, I didn't think much of it. And then I saw it happening in different places. So once it happened in Bhopal, then it was happening in Bangalore, then it was happening somewhere in Shillong. And I'm like, ye kaise? Why boys just asking me for hugs? And then when I started asking them, why do you know, I just wanted to know, like, why do you want a hug? And the answers were, I have never received a hug in my life. The answers were like, my parents don't ever give me hugs. The answer was like, sir, kisse mangu? You know, kaun dega? And that is the reality, right? What you're talking about, starvation. Young boys in our country are starved of touch. They are starved of touch. They don't have anybody who can hold them, can make them feel like they matter. Their being on this planet matters. And now the funny thing or the sad thing or the ironic thing is that 4 boys in a classroom will be saying the same thing. I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely. But then they're not talking to each other. And I'm very confused by this because it's happened in a classroom and I was like, tum 4 log bol rahe ho, I'm lonely. And unlike the girls, when a boy comes and says I'm lonely, there is no other boy who's saying that, you know, arey but I have him. Or that guy is there. Or there's some guy coming, which has also happened in girls expressing. If a girl comes and cries on stage, some girl will come running from somewhere and give her a hug. When a boy is there and he breaks, you know, his voice breaks because crying is a very big deal. Even if his voice breaks, no boy is coming to give him a hug. And then when you ask them why you're not talking to each other, because like, again, you are afraid कि अगर मैं कुछ बोलूँगा तो मुझे जज करेंगे. और क्यों तुम्हें ये डर लगता है? क्योंकि तुम भी सब कुछ जज करते हो. क्योंकि सिखाया ही गया सोसाइटी के अंदर कि लड़के अगर इमोशनल कुछ बात बोलें तो वो सीरियसली वो मतलब उनको बोलो भाई इमोशनल की जरूरत नहीं, तुम्हें अपनी फोकस करो पढ़ाई पे. लड़की है क्या, या फिर अपनी पढ़ाई पे फोकस करो. तुम्हें पैसे कमाने हैं, तुम इन चीज़ों में मत घुसो, ये लड़कियों के लिए है. That's what it ultimately, where does it come from? लड़कियाँ क्या क्यों बोलते हैं? Because they want you to focus on return on investment. Every boy in our country is a number. Is literally there's a value put to the boy, right? Where you have a boy, most families in our country, and this is just unfortunately the state of poverty in our country, that the boy is supposed to be the breadwinner of the. So you have a boy, you know, parents have 3 girls. Poorest people in our country, they will have 3 girls and still want to have a boy because they know that the boy can get us money. They don't have the self-awareness or the understanding of feminism that women also empowered. तो उनके लिए लगता है अच्छा एक और mouth to feed, अब लड़का आएगा ना, they will join and get us the money. And then the boy's entire life, the boy leads an entire life with this burden on themselves कि मेरी education पे इतने पैसे गए हैं, अब मुझे ये पैसे अपने पेरेंट्स के लिए वापस कमाने हैं एंड अपनी फ्यूचर लाइफ के लिए भी कमाने हैं. तो their entire at all times the boy is just thinking of return on investment. How much value can I create for my parents who have put that money into me? So in all of that, कहाँ टाइम है किसी के पास इमोशंस का, कहाँ टाइम है बोलने का कि मेरी लाइफ डिफिकल्ट है. अगर तुम बोलोगे फेलियर तो तुम यू आर नॉट रियली फोकस्ड ऑन व्हाट यू आर born for, literally. So it's a much deeper problem than just the fact that, you know, men don't cry. There are far bigger, deeper reasons.
That's so sad. I like to advocate for men. I like to think of myself as an ally, but I don't think मैंने इस तरह से कभी सोचा भी था. मेरे को पता भी नहीं था कि इतना ज़्यादा डेप्थ में ये प्रॉब्लम है कि जिस दिन से आप पैदा हुए हैं आपके सर पे, जैसे लड़कियों पे शर्म का टोकरा रख देते हैं, घर की शर्म आपके सर, लड़कों पे फैमिली रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी का टोकरा हैज कम इन. वाज इट अ स्टोरी दैट चेंज्ड, दैट फ्लिप्ड द स्क्रिप्ट फॉर यू, दैट यू नो what is the ideal look of what a man is supposed to be like, and that's not how it actually is? Was there some...
I mean, it was my own story.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like, I mean, you know, I was diagnosed with clinical anxiety at 29, 30. And my understanding of mental health till that point was that mental health issues happen to only those जिनकी ज़िंदगी में ख़राब चीज़ें चल रही हैं. And I was at Yashraj at that time. I was doing fairly well. I had made like some big shows that were massive hits. And you know, we had a couple of ups and downs, but that shouldn't have been problem enough for me to get clinical anxiety.
Yeah. That's the understanding.
Yeah, because exactly, you know, so I was fairly successful in everything that I was doing. And if outwardly, अगर आप देखोगे मेरे Instagram, even at that time, I was always putting great, you know, great things about my work, the awards I'm winning, etc., etc. And then suddenly, like, I'm like, what am I dealing with? That, and there's nothing. This is good almost 8-9 years ago, right? Nothing on the internet. I would ever see about mental health at that time, and especially about men talking mental health. So I was just like, there's something wrong with me. That is the first thought that comes to mind, that I'm broken in some way, that I'm going through all of this. So when you finally overcome all of this stigma, and somehow, and which is a very rare occurrence in men, but I've had people in my life who've gone to therapy, so they support me, especially my brother, who's also been to therapy, and said that, go for it, just give it a shot once. And I did go, and when I went there, it took me about, in fact, there's a really funny incident that happened where 3 months after taking therapy, my therapist is like, I've kind of figured out what's going on with you. I've figured out why you're here. And I was like, okay, tell me. And she's like, I think you're not emotional. And I was like, I am not emotional? And this is when the therapy session got over. So I was like, wait. She's like, okay, so let's meet next week and then we'll talk more. I was like, 1 week now I had to think about what is my therapist think that I'm not emotional. Have you seen my Facebook long posts? Have you seen how much emotional stuff I put out in the world? I cry in every movie. Everybody in my life thinks I'm emotional. What nonsense. I was like, I want to break up with this therapist. But I still went back because I was just like, why has she said something like this? And the first thing I spoke to, I said, you said I'm not emotional. But if I was not emotional, would I have had this emotional reaction to it? And she's like, wait, calm down. I knew that. I wanted to give you some time to like let this simmer in your head, and that's why I said like at the end of the session. And she's like, let me explain what I mean. She said, give this fantastic example which I still talk about and still remember so clearly to date, right? She said that so tell me one thing, when your wife Daisy has a tough day at work, what happens when she comes home? I'm like, well, she talks about it, and I kind of give her my perspective. Then if she's really in a bad mood, we watch something, like something light, entertaining, and then go to sleep. She said, okay, great. Now what happens when you come home from a hard day? I said, listen, I don't like bringing my hard days home. I like keeping my hard days at work, and my home is home and work is work, So I don't talk about it, and then, it gets over. Next day I sleep and get up and it's a new day. And she looks at me and she's like, you and every man in India. I said, what? And she's like, do you realize that literally every man does this? Every man thinks that, work is work, home is home. We cannot talk about work stuff at home, even if it is tough, even if it is bad, even if things are horrible, because, you think that the emotional burden of the world you have to carry on your shoulders because that's how you've been conditioned to think.
Protect and provide.
Protect and provide, right? And don't let the family get to know that there is a failure. Also, because when men fail, they are judged really harshly, and again, I'm not saying this in comparison to other genders, but it's purely as, like, as I said, your value is dependent on your success. So when you're failing, you're not being man enough. You're not, which is why an unemployed man is almost seen as like the scum of the earth. कि तुम क्या कर रहे हो अपनी जिंदगी के साथ? तुम काम नहीं करते. तुम्हारी वैल्यू क्या है? Which is why, today, if, like, again, which I find as a fascinating thing, right, just as a sociological thing, right, we have come this far in society now, and again, I'm saying not in a massive way, but in at least some capacity, in some, let's even say upper caste circles, where we know for a fact that a woman today can be both a nurturer and a provider. You don't have to choose between one of the two. At the same time, is there any conversation about a man being both a provider and a nurturer? Can a man sit at home while a woman goes to work? Can a man actually say, मैं घर का काम करता हूँ? Because that's choice, right? Feminism is choice about, you should be allowed to choose whatever you want.
When that Key and Ka film came out, there was so much brouhaha about it for no reason.
And this was a 10-year-old film, and have you ever seen a film like that again?
मैंने तो वो फिल्म भी नहीं देखी.
वो फिल्म नहीं देखी, हाँ, but I think 10 साल हो गए, वो बात अभी कहीं होती नहीं है. And even today I'm saying, if you hear your own biases, कि अच्छा आप क्या करते हो? अरे मैं घर पे बैठता हूँ. अच्छा आपकी वाइफ काम कर रही हो, आप घर पे बैठे हो. It's just such a bizarre idea, where now the idea of like a woman going to work while, and the man going to work, both of them, is an acceptable idea. Or at least in certain sections of society, again I would say in privileged sections of society, acceptable idea. But a man being at home, taking care of his children, not going to work, not earning, and the woman earning is just bizarre.
It's
right?
against the order of nature in so many people's minds.
Exactly. So to come back down to what I was really talking about is that there is, unfortunately, at the very core of when a child is born only, like you said, there are these two different gender constructs that are put on them. Women have to grow up and get married. That is literally the core reasoning of having a girl child. कि आप अभी तब तक raise कर रहे हो until you get married, and the guy has to make enough money to be the guy that the woman can marry. That is literally the all of society right now. And if you fail to do either of those, you are not man enough, So I've heard this, this loneliness has really been something that men in our country struggle with.
Wow. There is so much pressure to be enough in so many ways, like successful enough, rich enough, good in bed enough. There's just this मतलब ये तो खैर हर इंसान पे there's a way of in today's world, capitalism, all of that. But I feel like for men that is like on some different degree only. पैदा होते ही it is about how much can you provide, how much can you protect, how much can you perform.
Yeah.
How does one cope with the stress of that? How can young men dissociate their self-worth from ये पे फालतू की बातें?
Now again, when you say perform, right, like it just brings me to this idea of performance anxiety, right?
Huh?
Performance anxiety, you very rarely hear from women, right? You don't think that there are women going to doctors and saying, I have performance anxiety. But you've seen it in movies also. मतलब Friends के अंदर there was this really famous Chandler episode where he's just like, it happens with everyone, and he's getting really confused. He's like, I don't know what happened, and there's this whole thing. It doesn't happen with everyone. It is a big deal, and because he's just like shocked that a guy cannot.
He's failed at being masculine.
He's failed at being masculine purely because he was not able to perform in that one way, right? And it is these performances that all of us have had to do. Because of which, whether an anxiety builds up within us, whether it's a depression that builds up within us, whether it is any other sort of emotional suppression that eventually leads to a man in many ways bursting out, right? Like my trip to the therapist also happened where for 30 years I was following the entire order in which I was expected to be a man, right? I started writing at 14. I had interviewed Shah Rukh Khan at 20.
No way.
I have interviewed Shah Rukh Khan 3 times before I turned 25, So I've interviewed Michael Schumacher at 17. So I have literally, my career started as a teen journalist in Bahrain, and I was doing all kinds of crazy interviews as a teen journalist, meeting people in person and, and really like having the time of my life. But when it came to deciding what path I should take, my parents had no other path except for engineering because that's what boys do, and I did that engineering. But I could have done something else, and which was, and I may have been where I am today maybe 5 years earlier, who knows. But those 4 years, again, they got me my wife, so I'm very happy. Thank you, engineering college. But at the same time, just saying, like, so much of my life was just this expectation of what a man is supposed to be in terms of milestones. And the reason I also crashed, and I had clinical anxiety to the extent that I would have such massive panic attacks, which I later found out were called panic attacks, that I would barely be able to get up from bed. I would barely be able to go to office, and when I would be at office, like sometimes you overthink when you have anxiety, you overthink about the randomest things. You are passing in a hallway and you say hi to someone and someone says hi back in a way you are like, I don't think that person's hi was a warm hi. Have I done something wrong? Did I do? And the whole day you're spending and thinking about कि उसने hi गलत तरीके से बोला. It's that's what anxiety does, right? It's thought spirals. And I was going through that at work at a high pressure job like Yash Raj, where I have to really actually perform at a certain level, and I couldn't because I had been performing for 30 years. All the performances that were given to me, and then when I went to therapy and she said that you are just like any other man, that is the first time I realized I am like any other man. Because till then I used to always think of myself as, I think I'm a little bit more sensitive than other men, or I might be a little bit more as emotional than other men. And she really brought the difference very clearly out, and that relationship with my therapist has continued to like this date. We have been 8-9 years, second longest relationship I think after my wife. So and she's really very clearly brought it out, saying that when I say you're not emotional, what I really mean is that you it's not that you don't have emotions, It's just that you don't express them. Because being emotional actually means being able to feel emotions and being able to express them. And the reason men are, have all this burden of performance is because even when they feel burdened, they can't say it out loud. It is just, and you take it in any field. I'm an entrepreneur. The first year or so of Yuva's journey, I was the guy who would be like, I thought I'm going to start this really empathetic organization where we will all express openly about what we feel. And I started expressing, when we didn't, and in the year one of any startup, you have a lot of failures, Success is not very easy. So you will do a big pitch and it will not work out because you're a new company and you're nobody in the business. So I was someone who would be like, I'll talk about every success and every failure as equally and as honestly as possible, because I want to start this new setup where everyone's equal, where we have these honest conversations. And because in the beginning there was just so many more failures than successes, after a point of time, one person in my team came and said, I don't think you should be telling this team about your failures over and over again, because they're getting demotivated and they don't respect you enough anymore. They think you just are not capable of success. And I'm like, I have, if you look at my career before this, I've proven, I thought, enough that I am capable of success. This is a new company, it's hard. But I got pushback for saying that, can you just talk about the good stuff, don't talk about the bad stuff. And I'm like, okay, and then you start noticing this also, outside in the market. When you go out and do sales, if you are very honest about the fact that, okay, our company is doing this, but we have this vision and, it doesn't matter. You have to constantly say you're doing great. You have to constantly be like, we are killing it at a level that no company in the world in history has killed it. No matter what you're doing, you could be doing work in social impact and you have to be like, हमारा social impact दुनिया का सबसे ज़्यादा social impact है. इससे ज़्यादा social impact कोई कर ही नहीं सकता. मतलब इतना social और इतना impact है आप जान नहीं सकते. You have to be Trump. Really, you have to really be at that level, and that's why Trump is also where he is, because he is constantly it doesn't matter whether he wins or loses. He will just show the world that I am constantly winning. And
can't believe Trump is like
he's the most, he's like the man that most men unfortunately want to be, and that's why he's the president of United States, because most men are looking at him and saying that, look at this guy who's constantly successful. And it's not that he is constantly successful, he just doesn't believe in failures as a concept. And most men are conditioned to think like that.
पता है कोई ना कोई ये comment में लिख के जाएगा कि I don't believe in failures as a concept, and then they will internalize that कि fail हम कैसे करेंगे, हम तो fail हो ही नहीं सकते.
यार, okay, now if I go in the completely different and trying to understand this aspect, like a lot of people give shit to influencers and these male manifestation folks, or male like motivational creators or whatever it is, etc., etc. Now the thing is, unfortunately, real world is so hard for men, and I said the constant judgment. And the judgment really comes from the fact that if they fail at being masculine enough, at being successful enough, at being able to make enough of the money that they've been expected to make,
giving that return on investment.
The return on investment is not there, and then they are constantly नकारा, मतलब really निकम्मा हो जाता है इंसान, तुम तो निकम्मे हो, तुम कुछ नहीं कर पा रहे, तुम तो आगे कहीं बढ़ नहीं सकते, तुम्हारे क्या फायदा लाइफ के अंदर वगैरह वगैरह, right? When that happens, there is nobody in the ecosystem, and especially in the societal social ecosystem, that can sit with a man, because most fathers don't know how to talk to their sons. And most mothers are also unfortunately now conditioned by patriarchy enough that when a child is not able to, whether it's a girl, boy, any other gender, right, especially but boys, if they're not able to perform in a way that there's always in their head a potential कि तुम अपनी potential reach नहीं कर पा रहे. It's not about कि तुम successful. It may be the reason they're not performing in certain fields is because they're good at something else. But it'll never be a conversation. तुम और क्या कर सकते हो? तुम इसमें ये क्यों नहीं अच्छा कर पा रहे? और जब तुम अच्छा नहीं कर पा रहे तो मेरी जिंदगी में फायदा क्या है? तुम निकम्मे हो, तुम
हमने क्यों तुम पे तय?
हाँ, हमने पाल पोस के बड़ा किया, हमने कितने पैसे डाले तुम्हारी एजुकेशन के अंदर, हमने कितनी बार तुम्हें मतलब इट कुड बी एनीथिंग, हमने आज तक जो तुम्हारे लिए किया है, बड़ा यहाँ तक बड़ा किया, उसके बाद तुम ये इतना नहीं कर पा रहे,
तुम ये कर रहे हो हमारे लिए.
एंड एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इट इज द इंटरनेट दैट कम्स टू बी द सेवियर्स. इट इज दीज इन्फ्लुएंसर्स, एंड at best you get someone like and I say this with all love to Ranveer, at best you'll find a BeerBiceps who actually is like very centrist in his motivation and says, you know, you can do it and, you know, you can be a better man or whatever. That's how he started. He started as a motivational fitness influencer and then became a podcaster, right? And the worst case, you go to an Andrew Tate,
huh?
you know, and he tells you not only the fact that, you know, and he reiterates this, what I'm telling you with like a lot of love and empathy. He will say this whole exact spiel, but from a lens of the fact that everyone hates you. You know, the reason that they cannot value you is because they hate you, because you are not man enough. And you know, how do you be a man? If you give that hate back, and especially if it's a woman, go and slap her. You know, that is what they say. You know, that's how you prove that you're a man. And then they believe that, okay, there is at least someone who recognizes the problem. It's not even about the solution. The solution comes secondary. There is someone who makes them feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
And if we as a society are able to create enough safe spaces online and offline where men at least feel heard, then we can figure out the solutions. अभी हम वो problem की बात नहीं कर पा रहे इतनी. Problem हमको पता ही नहीं कि problem है. And you know, this whole everyone's making fun of this male loneliness epidemic. You know, and again, the idea. Like, and there are some really funny jokes around it also. I completely agree. Prashasti made this entire stand-up piece where she spoke about male loneliness epidemic. Se ladkiyan baat kar rahi hain, ladke to baat hi nahi kar rahe. It's such a great insight, right? It is mostly women who talk about the male loneliness epidemic. Because आदमी को तो पता भी नहीं epidemic है. They have no idea there's an epidemic which they are part of. Because loneliness is not something they can speak of. So, you know, to think of it as many men going through it, वो तो पता ही नहीं, हम तो बकचोदी कर रहे हैं, हमको क्या पता. बट उस बकचोदी तुम सिर्फ बकचोदी करवा रहे हो, जब तुम इमोशनल हो रहे हो तुम बात ही नहीं कर पा रहे किसी से. दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम. सो इंस्टेड ऑफ finding all these phrases and finding all of these insights and statistics about men, if we in our own lives just try to create spaces where men don't feel judged, I feel if we are able to reach as a society to a place where men have more empathy for themselves, I feel like they would also have more capacity to have empathy for others. The reason they are men have been so unkind to people around them, whether it is homophobia, whether it is misogyny, whether it is anything, any caste. I mean, again, it could be power, casteism, it could be literally anything you can look at. I feel it really genuinely starts on the fact that when they were boys, no one showed them empathy. And if we are able to create places, situations, conversations, content, anything where men are really asked to kind of forgive themselves, you know, be kind to yourself. I feel like if they are nurturing, not just to the world outside but to themselves, perhaps they will also find a way of having it within them to be kinder to the world around them.
Does it get hard to be the sensitive guy?
Wow. I mean, it depends on the context, right? Like, is it exhausting after a point? You know, again, I don't know. You know, again, do you ask, I mean, again, not to say this as a thing, but like nobody's going to tell a woman, are you exhausted having so much empathy? You know?
No, it is exhausting.
It can be, right? Yeah. But that is also because so many of the burdens of having empathy for an entire other gender that doesn't have it for themselves, which is where the problem is, right? I'm saying that we should find a way of making men feel that they can be kind to themselves, but unfortunately this entire burden has been put on women. Aap karo. Whereas my advocacy has been men should do this for other men.
Yeah.
I, in Be a Man, need to create a safe space for another man so that man can create it for someone else. Instead of telling all the women and who are already doing it, have been doing it for centuries at you know, which is the tragedy, right? Like, this is not even something you need to tell women. They are anyway doing it, you know. From Jane Austen, who thinks, you know, where literally am I supposed to be fixing all the men in her life, or till to date, you know, our mothers, their entire lives have been really just supporting the father and taking on the emotional burdens of the father. कि आप नहीं कर पा रहे तो मैं लेती हूँ emotional burden, आप पैसा कमाओ. And वो emotional burden अभी you know, औरतों को, of course, women should be sensitive about what men are going through. At the same time, it shouldn't be upon women to take up the burden of the emotional labor of creating safer spaces for men. I think it's men who should find within themselves these safe spaces, create these safe spaces for other men, and have beautiful, warm relationships like women do. You know, there's so much to learn, and not to say male friendships are any less meaningful or less amazing than female friendships, but what would make them even better is if you're able to have honest, raw emotional conversations with your male best friend. You know, भुवन भाम मेरे शो पे आया था, नकुल मेहता मेरे शो पे आए थे. दोनों ने लिटरली, भुवन ने तो पूरे मतलब अपनी लाइफ की बहुत सेंसिटिव टफ बातें की. And at the end, I asked him, because he spoke about like this friend group that he has for the last 15-20 years of his life. And I asked him, you know, have you been able to tell all of this to them? And he's like, they will find out for the first time in this show. And I was like, you said they were bestest friends. And he's like, yeah, but, you know, I don't want to spoil the mood when I talk about what's happening in my life with my friends. That is how boys think. He was able to tell me, a stranger.
That sharing your stories.
Can you imagine? He was able to share with a stranger. Well, a stranger, as in we are friends, but we are not best friends. He was able to tell me on the show what he's gone through on a podcast with, you know, 5 cameras around him, but he's not been able to tell it to his best friends. Nakul was telling on his show, on the show, how, like, you know, when it's after 20 years of being best friends with someone, he was able to, you know, very recently pick up the call and just talk about a tough thing in his life with his best friend, because it was very hard. You know, it's not, these are not easy things, and again, there is no precedence for this. There is no, when you look at movies, cinema, all of it, right, you will see always men going to the women for sensitivity, and for men, they'll go to for mentorship. They will never go for emotional support. आप कुछ भी देख लो ना, सारे आदमी के रिलेशनशिप होंगे, सूट्स, it's all like fun, funky, you know, back and forth.
थोड़ा सा मुझे बिजनेस सिखा दो.
Exactly. Or at best you'll be like, मुझे लड़की नहीं समझ आ रहा कैसे बतानी है, तुम बताओ मुझे. तो कोई आदमी आके बोल रहा है, मैं बताता हूँ तुम्हें. But you know, how do I deal with loss in my life? Who is talking about it on camera? How do I deal with like failure in my life? Who's talking about it among men? So again, when you talk about, to come back to your very simple question, I don't think it's a burden being a sensitive person. I think it's a privilege to be able to say what I'm feeling, because I'm able to express it. It goes out in the world and it doesn't stay within me. And when it doesn't stay within me, I'm able to breathe easier, you know, versus just the emotional suppression most men have carried in their lives. To an extent that they have just had like heart attacks and died, or they've turned alcoholic, or they have gotten depression or anxiety or whatever, and they've not taken therapy because therapy is not seen as a very manly thing to do.
It's always such a delight to talk to you, because I learn something so different every time. I'm going to ask you something that like is sort of my area of expertise, talking about sex and sexual health. Because there's so much pressure on men to perform. How can a woman support someone who is maybe not performing in that moment because of whatever's happening in their life? What is a good way to create a safe environment for a man to be sexually free, and then support him when, in case that doesn't happen for whatever reason, on whatever day?
Simple answer, you can't. And I'll tell you why. You know, because unfortunately, whatever is going on is actually going on within the man. It's not about the woman. It's about what the man is feeling inside of him. That insecurity comes from inside of him. That anxiety is inside of him. The woman is, and in fact, at this point of time, if the woman says, you know, it's okay, I'm here for you, most likely the man will interpret and be like, what are you here for? It's not a big deal, you know. And if she says something to that, let's go to a doctor and let's find a solution, like, oh, you think I'm broken? That is the way that most men are going to look at this thing, right? And again, I'm not talking about all men, but I would imagine this is just, and this is true for any insecurity that men have, right? Yes, what you should not do is obviously judge someone when they're going through something like this, is to shame someone. Shaming in any way, no matter what gender you are, is a terrible thing to do. Please don't do it. Please don't bully people. Please don't mock people. Don't shame them. The safest space you can sometimes create is just allowing people to figure this out on their own time, right? Like, if there's something that's going on with a man in your life when it comes to sexual health and they're not able to figure it out, just sometimes not saying words and just really just holding someone's hand, and that's enough, you know. Sometimes you don't need advice, sometimes you don't need solutions, sometimes you don't need like even words, you know, words. And it's funniest thing that it coming from me, but I think like sometimes words can be overrated. Sometimes silences are great, you know, as long as you know that, you know, honestly, the thing that I truly feel that men can benefit more from, and what I feel like women can if at all you want to support a man in your life, just give him more touch. And I don't mean sexual intimacy only at all times, right? Just touch. Just hold the man in your life's hand, give them a peck on the cheeks when you can, hug them as much as possible. I think that is something that men have been lacking most of their lives after they have stopped living with their mother. Because I would imagine that. And when you have this stereotype, why do most men look for their mothers? They're not really looking for someone who can cook like their mother, or who can think like their mother or feel like their mother. They're really just looking for someone who can acknowledge the human being in them and give them touch, give them support, give them hugs, make them feel safe. It is coming back to the same question. Every man feels safest with a mother, right, with their mother, because that they are the only ones who are not ashamed of holding you when you're crying, who are not judging you when something happens to you, who are constantly like giving you this intimacy, which is really lacking in every other part of your life. You don't have boys holding another boy's hand and saying चलो walk पे चलते हैं, right? वो joke बन जाएगा तुरंत, हाँ वही तो बात है, exactly, meme बन जाते हैं उन चीज़ों पर वगैरह वगैरह. I have done that, yeah. It's such a strange thing to say, but like in college, one of my closest friends is from Tamil Nadu, and I think वहाँ पर कुछ है culture के अंदर के जहाँ पर holding hands and walking with guys is okay. UP also. UP they hold their pinkies like this and walk. Interesting, yeah, which I find very fascinating, and I want to dive deeper into that. But like he tried holding my hand once while you were walking. I was like, what are you doing? And he's just like, I'm holding your hand. I was like, why? He's like, because we're friends. I was like, we're not that kind of friends. This is literally a dialogue I've said, and I was 18, 19, I was stupid and I shouldn't have said these things, right? But I mean, now, when you're older in life, and unfortunately again, I have a partner, I have now a daughter, I get enough, my mom now lives close to me, so I do get enough intimacy. But just imagine not having all of this in your life, not having women in your life. Who is the male person in your life you go for hugs to, or for holding hands, or for just feeling safe? That is, I think, the ultimate thing you can do for a man.
This is genuinely so, I don't know, eye-opening for me. I don't think I've ever thought of it this way. And obviously medicine में हम touch starvation पढ़ते हैं. We actually read it for elderly people more than anything else. But ये तो हर लड़के के साथ हो रहा है. मतलब मेरे अभी थोड़े से like big light bulb is happening in my head right now. I don't think I've ever seen it in that way.
I think Trevor Noah even once did a reel which I really agree with. In fact, where he spoke about how a lot of, and while I'm talking about intimacy, he was talking about sexual intimacy, and he actually said, and you should find that reel, put it out in the world, I think it's amazing, where he actually said that most men are actually not looking for sex, they're looking for touch, and so when they even have sex, actually what they're really looking for is, through sexual pleasure, the pleasure of actually being intimate with another human being, which they don't get enough in life, which is why sex is the only place that for them it is okay to hold someone or be someone. Of course, sex can get aggressive at whatever it is, like for a lot of men, right? But it comes from this innate lack of touch in their life, and that is where sex conflates it. And sex becomes that one place where you are going for release. But that release is not just a sexual release, actually it is like a physical release. It's a release, it's a catharsis that they're trying to have of like someone holding them in whatever way possible, or them being held in some way possible.
Wow, that's genuinely so fascinating for me. Are there any masculinity trends on the internet that scare you?
Most of the internet masculinity scares me. What trends? Everything scares me.
Are there any that give you hope?
See, I find it just really horrid that men are so unkind to women online. I just find it really like disheartening, and dangerous, disheartening, scary, upsetting that men can just casually throw rape threats, death threats, slurs at women on the internet without fear of consequence, without fear of accountability, without fear of like, oh, this is of morality. Like I would have imagined that most people are raised well. I would imagine that most parents try to have a very innate understanding of good and bad to their child, you know, which would include just be respectful of everyone. I'm not even saying gender wise. सबके साथ इज्जत से बात करो, सबके साथ प्यार से बात करो. That is a basic. And then, you know, you kind of go back and think कि सबकी lives में क्या चल रहा है? What is going on in our country that men and young men, old men, all kinds of men just feel like the only joy in their life is going on the internet and saying abusing something, abusing, you know, particularly women. You know, how do you find it completely comfortable in just saying horrid and sexual things to women online? With your earlier it used to be anonymous. Now people are doing with their face, they're doing it with their profiles, they're doing with their without fear of consequence.
Work handles.
Yeah, with their work handles. मतलब क्या normalization हो गया इस बात का यार, मुझे समझ ही नहीं आ रहा. And you know, again, when I keep trying to think of it, of course people like Andrew Tate are a huge reason for this. You know, there are all of these influencers online and creators online. There are enough in India also who kind of say that, you know, your whole job as a man is to dominate women.
Yeah, belt treatment.
Yeah, belt treatment, dominate women. You need to really show them their place, you know. Again, unfortunately, it comes from the fact that तुम्हारे घर के अंदर तुम्हारे शायद फादर ने मदर से प्यार से बात नहीं की, तो तुम्हें लगता है that is the only way, you know, forward. And we have to break these cycles instead of actually partaking in it. You know, we have to. If your mother did not get kindness at home, why would you want to repeat it with someone else? You should find a way of creating safer environments for the women in your life. And yet, that again, so much of this comes down to the loneliness, where the loneliness of men is. It is manipulated, it is used against them.
It's weaponized.
It's weaponized, right? It's weaponized by all of these creators, and sometimes, you know, a lot of the right wing, where, you know, you find, okay, these young people are lonely, they don't have any grounding in their lives, they don't have any root in their life. So again, you know, when you don't have something to work for or work towards, you find something to work against. If you don't have, you know, love in your life, you fill that with hate. And that is what a lot of these, the weaponization that you are speaking about, that's where the weaponization comes from. Where people who have a little bit of understanding of psychology understand this. That the easiest, unemployed, lonely, without love, without care, and of course born in a body where you are constantly just treated as someone who needs to, whose entire job and worth in life is money. And if you're not able to earn that money, then you are worthless as a person. So where do you take out that anger? And the easiest target has been women on the internet, because you've seen that at home. You've seen women being subjugated at home, so you think that subjugating women online is going to give you some sense of power. And again, as I said, men are weaponizing that online. I love talking to you. I mean, it's very disheartening, and I really, really, really like hope that, I mean, two things. I hope like more women can openly call out this. I think you need to show fear of consequence. I think you need to show consequences to men who think that this is sport. This is not sport, this is not funny, this is not a joke. You cannot just give a rape threat to a woman and feel like nothing, that's okay. And you're just doing this online. It's a game, it's not a game. It's someone's real life, it's someone's real emotions. Do better. And second, I really truly believe that it is incumbent on men to hold other men in our lives accountable. If you see someone saying jokes like this, making threats like this, you know, you have to kind of, and do it in whatever way. I'm not even saying call out. तुमको प्यार से बात करनी है, बोलो भाई तू क्या कर रहा है, तुम प्यार से बात कर लो. ये भी नहीं कह रहा हूँ कि call out culture, whatever, ठीक है, तुम्हें वो करना. If you find that powerful and you find that it will have, you know, Tane, how many young, and I don't want to like say this as a thing I do, I mean, it's not something I'm trying to say from a lens of taking credit for. But I speak to a lot of young influencers and creators online, privately. When I see them putting something online which I'm like, hey, this is little misogynist, or this is little, I try to have conversations with them. So I'll go get into DMs and say, listen, I know you, we have met, I think you're a sharp kid, I think you have, you know, you seem like a really intelligent, why would you say something like this? And more often than not, you know, they would suddenly be disarmed and be like, okay, yeah, I mean, I didn't realize this is a wrong thing to say or whatever. I was like, it is a wrong thing to say. And you know, they sometimes actually come back and say thank you for that conversation. They remember that conversation. Next time you meet and say, आपने मुझे वो बात बताई, मुझे से बहुत help हो गई. Sometimes that's all you need. You need to tell people are sometimes just ignorant. It's not even vile, it's not even vileness, it's probably ignorance, it's all stupid. And again, that's what I'm saying, this is not about women, this is on men. We need to make sure that other men in our lives are not behaving like this. How do we ensure that, whether it is calling people out, whether it is having private conversations, whether it is just kind of really holding their hand and saying, bro, this is not a nice thing to do, mat karo ye. Not for the fear of consequence, because just be a decent human being, you know. Hopefully that will change things. So at both ends, I think this is a consequence is also important, and accountability is also important.
Is that what gives you hope? Like, what are the internet trends that give you hope?
Internet trends that give me hope is
internet
just
conversations that give you hope.
It's just again, if you're talking about particularly masculinity, just men, you know, who are comfortable in their body, you know. I find it so lovely that, you know, there was this just a year ago or something, there was this kid who was dancing in what a lot of commentators called an effeminate way, and there was a lot of bullying that this kid was going through, and then you would see a surge of positivity where a lot of the other people just came and said, let him be, he wants to dance in whatever way you want, who are you to say? And then the same kid, after getting, you know, all of this horrid comments, suddenly had this plethora of like just positivity, of just men, of all kinds of people saying, you are okay, you know, be yourself, don't worry about the world. This is just very recently, there's this photo of a guy and his wife that went viral. The guy is really dark, and the, you know, woman's fair, and that's why, you know, most people are like, oh, the woman is the gold digger, or the ladke ko kaise kaise mil gayi, bahut rich hoga. Clearly that is the only reason that people fall in love, because of money, right? So reductionist, but mostly people were just calling the guy ugly and saying that how did usko hoor kaise mili, langur ko vagara vagara, you know, just the stupidest jokes. And then when they started going viral, you know, where what used to happen in the past is that if something starts getting hate, it then just keeps going and going and going. Now what I'm seeing and I'm really liking is that something gets a certain kind of hate, and which is completely undeserved. And when I say deserved hate, it is sometimes when you're talking about really harmful things, then of course it's important. It's not hate, it's again accountability. So undeserved hate someone's getting, then there is just a bunch of people who've come, all kinds of verified handles, just commenting and saying, you know, your love story is so amazing, you know, wish you all the love in the world, wish you the most happy marriage ever, don't listen to all of this, be yourself, you're a wonderful person. And I want to see more of that. I want the internet to be used like if like my most used you know, emojis online are hearts. So if you see any reel, like if I've commented on it, it's mostly just heart. But I really want to normalize this idea of just putting, even if you don't have anything to say, just put out hearts and let someone know that, you know, when they're doing something nice, that it's important that you've done something nice, you know. It means something to other people to see kindness, you know, to see hope. It gives you hope as well when you see something hopeful. So where it is far more normalized at this point of time to comment something, you know, vile, you know, like I see what's happening with Arjun Kapoor, dude. Like I don't know. It is just so stupid, it is so horrid, it infuriates me, it breaks my heart that, you know, the same people who, when Sushant Singh Rajput died, went and talked about how, hey, we should be kind to people online, mental health is a very big deal, etc., etc. What are you doing to Arjun Kapoor? Like, okay, you had one great joke that you made and everybody laughed, move on. He is putting something about Dharmender passing away, and there are comments about Arjun Kapoor, you know, Arjun Kapoor is this or that. How are you so insensitive? And these same people, Taneja, are going to be the ones, because again, we encourage, you know, you see the number of likes such comments get. The loudest, most obnoxious voices get the most engagement. They get the most, and algorithms also incentivize.
Yeah, 100%.
Because they are so absurd, they are so like obnoxious, and they're so loud in some way or the other that algorithms are like, अच्छे से engagement बहुत मिलेगी, इसको incentivize करेंगे तो वो ज़्यादा viral जाएंगे. And then if 10 comments are getting 10,000 likes, then 10 more people also want to get the same likes, because that's where their self-worth comes from.
Exactly. Points on the internet.
Yeah, and you know, and you need to stop, yaar. You know, there is a human being over there, no matter what you think of him as an actor, and you know, he's a pretty good actor, he's not even a bad actor. I'm saying forget all of that. Whatever you may think of his acting, whatever you think of his performances, you are talking about a human being over here.
Yeah.
How can you so relentlessly
Kindness
mock
is easy.
someone.
Kindness is very easy.
Yeah, so again, for me, it's very important to constantly, even if you see the kind of reels sometimes I make, I don't make too many reels when I'm talking or giving opinions. Most of my reels when I make an opinion is like, be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind. Because I also need to live in this world. So it's also for a selfish reason. I'm not just saying that because I have the enormity out of my heart and saying like, oh, I'm a very decent person, everybody needs to be like me. No, I need to live in this world. My daughter needs to grow up in this world. And if this world is going to continue being terrible, it's not a world I want to see. So it's incumbent on all of us to do whatever we can to create safer, kinder spaces online. And I love when I see that online. I love that trend. Be kind.
Yay.
Yay.
Nikhil, genuinely, you're one of my most favorite people to talk to on the internet, people that I know online and offline.
Likewise.
This has been such a delight.
While you haven't spoken as much here because, you know, when you give men a chance to talk, they don't stop. But
we need to hear men more often.
Sure, if you say so. And I do think, yes, of course, especially about the emotional stuff. But every time we've had a conversation offline, you've been just one of the, again, legitimately one of the people who I've found sweetest, kindest. You know how much you've helped me in a tough time of mine, you know, and I really, really am, like, you ask me to come anywhere, I will show up without any questions. You ask me whatever you want to ask. And I'm just so grateful you exist as a person because of the work you do and the kind of conversations you are platforming, but also behind all of this, you're such a wonderful person and I'm so grateful to call you a friend.
You're so kind. Thank you. I have this thing that I'm crying on every show on this, on every episode on this podcast. I'm going to cry now. No, but thank you. This has been so lovely.